we couldn't think of anyone better than the one and only Jordan Belfort to kick us into shape, honestly, for 2022 when it comes to really building a great sales process. Now, what a lot of you don't know is that Jordan Belfort actually works with multiple 8-figure law firm owners all across the United States. So it's not like he's using his straight line persuasion system and using it for other verticals. He's actually using it for law firms, right? And he's actually helped create intake scripts that work for lawyers all across America. And today we're gonna be able to dive deep into some different methods that you can use in your firm. So before I introduce him, I just want everyone to strap in, get your notebooks ready, and get ready for a mind-blowing session. I would say the best sales expert, the best sales consultant on planet Earth, the one and only, the Wolf of Wall Street himself, Jordan Belfort. Jordan, if you're there, turn your camera on. We're super excited to have you here.
Well, listen, it's an honor to be here, really. I was asked to speak at a blockchain conference, and it was very technically oriented about not so much, it was really very specific on blockchain, the metaverse and things like that. And it was a phenomenal, I think, experience for both myself and the audience. There was a lot of really smart people there. But then after that, I got booked for sales training. And that's really, originally where my career started out, was in this, idea that, listen, at the end of the day, either you're selling or you're failing in life. And that's not just in business, it's both business and personal. You're selling people that your ideas make sense, that your concepts make sense. You could be selling your children simply on their idea of making the value of making their bed in the morning or doing their homework. You could be a teacher selling their students on the value of education. You could be a pastor selling your congregation on a certain moral principle. You could be a politician, God forbid, trying to sell your constituency on some sort of referendum with to vote a certain way. And I always use this example, you could be a lawyer trying to persuade a jury to see things one way or the other. And then now let's flip it on its head to the business side, and why I think I've been asked to speak here. You also, as lawyers, need to be salespeople, not just to the juries and to the other side of a plaintiff's argument. You need to be selling yourself to your clients if you want them to actually become clients. And I understand this really strange thing in both the legal world and the medical world, where it's very hard for doctors and lawyers or even CPAs to see themselves as being salespeople, because you spent a lot of time in school and you have a very valuable degree. You give a lot of value to people. It's a skill that is, people say, I hate lawyers, but without lawyers, nothing's happening. Let's face it, right? It's a necessary evil at worst and a very excellent way to protect yourself at best, right? Which I, have many, many lawyers. But the bottom line is that unless you can convince someone, an individual or an entity, if you're a court, trying to sell a firm on hiring you, you're not the only lawyer in the world. Like there's many lawyers, and all of them, we live in a world that's very noisy right now. It's getting noisier, and everyone's online screaming that they're the best. People are still using the old traditional ways of advertising on TV, on radio, on billboards. And, there's this sort of, when it comes to the legal world, there is this long continuum. And on one side, you would have like the type of lawyer that would I would never even lower myself to think I even have to sell my services. My reputation should speak for itself. And how dare you even insinuate that I'm a salesman? That's probably the kind of lawyer my father would be if he was a lawyer. He hated
By the
salesmen.
way, we're all guilty of it, right? So just admit up to it.
Yeah. And then on the other side, you have people that are in certain industries like personal injury or immigration law, where, there's obviously, it's more of a sort of like a conveyor belt process where there's a mass volume in certain instances. And those people, either they are identifying as lawyers and salespeople, or they're not doing very well, or they've outsourced the function to somebody else and someone is closing someone. So, that has been that process and that fact has been distilled down to be proven this year. And in the last year, I consulted for 2 very large law firms, and that were making already millions of dollars a year when I took the job. And the results I've been able to get on those firms have been staggering. We've been, consulting for them privately, where one of them is now, I think their revenue's gone up tenfold in 1 year, in one single year. Why? A couple things. One is the sales side of the equation. And then there's this other side that I think often gets overlooked by lawyers and business people alike, is the operational sales side. There's sales in terms of sales, influence, and persuasion. That means basically if you're selling to individual clients and the people, right, is that how do you convince a client that you are the best solution for them as a lawyer? Remember, like, unless they, it's been referred and they're just loyal to that person, they're in and they're sold before they start, right? Well, they might be interviewing 2, 3, or 4 different lawyers who are all saying something relatively similar. So how do you stand out? And also, what do you do when you get that perfect client? Meaning, the first step, and I'll get into this in more detail when I unpack the sales process, is that you're going to want to ask certain questions to a prospective client to find out if they're even right for your firm, right for your practice. You don't just take every client that walks in the door. That wouldn't be ethical, and it's usually not ethical in any sales setting at all. Before you know if you can help someone, you have to start asking them questions to identify what their needs are, their problems, their pain points, what issues they're facing. Are you the right solution? So what would you do as a lawyer if you're ethical? If you're not the right solution, you refer them to the right person, or you point them in the right direction. And if you don't have the right answer, if you don't know the right person and you can't help them, you don't take their money. That's not what ethical persuasion, that's not what ethical selling is all about. Ethical selling, the way I teach it, is basically you're going to ask people certain questions and you're going to find out if your solution is the right solution for them. And then once you're sure of that, then you go about explaining why your particular solution is the best solution, the most cost-effective solution, the one they should certainly be buying or taking advantage of. And then that next point is those 3 letters, NOW, now. Why should they do it now versus, okay, great, sounds good, let me think about it, let me call you back. So that's a huge issue. It's not enough, I always say, to get someone to buy, is you want to get them to buy now. Now, in some cases and in some types of law, and also I'm just going to keep it with law tonight, but it also occurs in other industries. Not every single call, when I say close someone on buying now, that might not necessarily be signing up. So it could be, when you talk about a close, it's something called ABC, always be closing. And when we hear that, I think it was made famous in a movie with Alec Baldwin, Glenn Ross, right? ABC, always be closing. And what happens with most people when they hear that, they get turned off because it ignites this visual of like the hard charging, fast talking salesperson that's just closing at any cost, doesn't care about his client's needs, and is just going to take as much money as they can. They're just closing machines and they just talk, and they seldom listen. That is not what ABC means, not even by a long shot. When they say the healthy version of ABC is that you're always closing every second you're either talking and listening, but not necessarily on buying from you. You could be closing them simply on that you're a person worth listening to, so they'll listen to your next statement. The close could be that I'm talking to you now in a way that says, wow, this person seems really sharp, so I continue to listen versus tuning out. That's a close right there. Closing on listening to your next thought. Closing someone on simply answering your questions honestly and forthrightedly is a close. So when I say that you're always closing, before I start asking you questions, I'm first going to close you on that I've earned the right to ask you those questions, that I have enough authority. I've painted enough of a picture that you say, wow, this person seems really, really sharp. I believe they can help me. They seem like experts in their fields. They're on the ball, their problems. You want to have already closed them on that thought, that feeling. And then you say, great. Now, and you ask for permission to ask questions. Just a couple of quick questions so I can get an idea of exactly how to best help you. And then you don't just start asking questions. If you just start asking questions without any of that, you're the grand inquisitor. Versus, and everyone hates the grand inquisitor. Oh, let me ask you this. Let me ask you that. You're like, all right, guilty as charged to the lawyer. And you have that with a lawyer who has very poor communication skills. Is they ask questions and they're done. You've lost the client, and you think you're doing because you've read one square in a sales book or some course. We need to ask questions because God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen twice as much as we speak. So you say, okay, I have to ask questions. Well, the problem with that is if you don't first build up some position as an expert in your field, that you have some rapport with them on an unconscious level, that they just say, kind of like, I identify with this person on a, they don't even know why, you just seem like they just have some inherent trust in the way you act that feels right. Okay. You position yourself as an expert. As I said, you're sharp, you're a problem solver. And then you ask for permission now, let me ask you some questions so I can help you. Like, no, let me just ask you a few quick questions so I can understand exactly how to best help you. Sound good?